dark feminine, it is an intrinsic part of our feminine identity, and to not be afraid of it and to move into it is where, I say this throughout the whole book, we find our light in the dark. We can't have one without the other. And to really remember that that is a part of our feminine experience is our rage is, I just think, one of the most incredible acts of self-empowerment there is.
So you write, quote, "Rage is not only sacred, but it's sacredly feminine," end quote. Let's start there.
Well, when we think of the feminine, the divine feminine, which I believe so many women are coming home to and in this reclamation around, we often defer to the beautiful, nourishing, expansive aspects of her, which is the qualities of flow and receptivity and beauty and surrender and compassion and empathy and the beautiful values of the feminine, which aren't only exclusive to women as a gender, but the world. But back to women, we don't talk about the dark feminine often in that narrative. And she is all of it. She encompasses rage and ferocity and pain. And when we think about like the birthing process, right? Because that is really our core magic, is our ability to create life. Whether we birth children or not, we have that sacred technology. And that is often excruciatingly painful when we are in a cycle of death and rebirth. And we often suppress that as women. We've been conditioned and programmed to be nice, be kind, be pretty, be polite. That's part of the patriarchal system, which I can go so deep on. And that has been deeply repressed in many women, that has caused a lot of sickness, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And to really tap into that part of our identities, our psyches, is sacred. It's healing. And I talk about in the book where I first tapped into that myself at a retreat where we were introduced to an exercise called the anger gym, where we were all given baths. We were outside in a big field with mats on the ground, like from PE class, and we were told to take this bat and start beating the shit out of the ground, screaming at the top of our lungs. We all thought it was a joke, but it was the exercise. And in an hour's time, Jason, I was able to purge and ultimately alchemize so much repressed anger from people who'd hurt me, betrayals, resentments, trauma, my own self-hatred and loathing. And within an hour, I was purified and literally a different human being. And I just think that we're walking through life on a daily basis, women especially, with all the things that we're up against, whether it's, the suppression of the feminine power to daily stress in our lives. If someone cuts us off or criticizes us or someone's mean to our child at school, we just hold it in our bodies. And to really access it as a healing modality is, I think, one of the most powerful things we can do, not only as women, but as people. But that dark feminine, which is often referred to in, Kali and Durga, if you look at goddess culture, I mean, it is an intrinsic part of our feminine identity. And to not be afraid of it and to move into it is where, I say this throughout the whole book, we find our light in the dark. We can't have one without the other. And to really remember that that is a part of our feminine experience is our rage is, I just think, one of the most incredible acts of self-empowerment there is.
No, I agree. And I think everyone would wholeheartedly agree with the statement that repressing anger is not good for your overall health and well-being. And it could lead to a whole host of issues. And exploding is one of them. It's like the woman who, or a man who's trying to hold it all together all the time, and then all of a sudden just explodes. And I think it's challenging for people who are busy and maybe are having a hard time with their health, their finances, and trying to pull it together for their family, for their children. So what are some of the practices? Like, I do love the baseball bat exercise that you just mentioned. I think that sounds like a lot of fun. Like, we've all seen like those home renovation shows when they're like taking a jackhammer and like, going and banging the wall. And I'm like, oh, that would kind of be fun to do sometimes. Is it like boxing? Is it like, what are some, if we're gonna, get some cardio in there, what do you recommend on a daily basis so you don't have to go to the farm and start hammering the soil?
Boxing classes are great for sure. Not everyone has time to do that every day. What I actually have a couple practices that I work with. I mean, I will go into my bedroom and scream into a pillow if I'm having a tough. Sometimes I just scream sitting at my desk. I scare my dogs, and that's fine. I work from home. But one of my favorite practices, so just really being conscious of when that's coming up in you and to make it just like you would do, 5-minute mini meditation or squats and move your body, like to release anger can be a micro practice that you bake into your day as your day goes on. Another incredible practice that resets and recalibrates your nervous system is pushing a wall. So I kind of put my bare feet so I don't slip. I take off my socks and shoes and I will press my body as if I'm trying to literally push the wall. And I will do that 3 times in a row, and it completely shifts your energy and you like you go for it from your feet all the way up into your body. You channel it into your palms and you push a wall. One of my spiritual coaches gave me this as a practice, and I do it.
I love that. That's great. Just watch out for the sheetrock, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Listeners, like, make sure it's a sturdy wall because we got some strong women. We're going to start breaking down some walls.
Amen. Amen. But that is something you can easily do throughout your day. It takes a couple minutes.
And so on the flip side, you also write, joy gets us into alignment. And also, joy, and I love this, joy, the greatest flex of power there is, end quote. Joy, the greatest flex of power there is. That is good.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't take total credit for that, although I will. I wrote about it. That was a message that came to me when I was in Egypt. So to kind of break down what I want women to understand about that message, I have to go back to really where I was for a majority of the last couple of years. We met when I wrote my first book, B. You had me on one of your master classes. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life for the most part, and I had built a business that rocket shipped and was super successful. Wrote my first book. It doubled my team, doubled my revenue in less than 12 months. It was a mountain climb. And I was in deep, deep hustle mode. And I talk about this apex often. The year 22 was the hardest, darkest year of my life, while it was at the same time the peak of my career and success. And I went on a very spiritually, universally oriented, divinely timed trip to Egypt at the end of that year when I was at the darkest point of my burnout. And I was in a temple. I'm pretty clairaudient, which means I can like hear things. And I got a message in one of those temples. It was the temple of Dendera, who's the goddess of Hathor's temple, and she's the goddess of bliss. And she basically told me in that temple that I had missed the entire point of my life, working hard, collecting all the accolades, growing money, success, blah, blah, blah. And that the whole point of the human experience is to really have fun, to enjoy my life. And that joy was my birthright. And I came home from that trip and really my whole life took a 180. And I sold my business. I moved to Nashville. A lot of incredible things started to flow. And it was the simplest practice of making joy my job. And when we get into this frequency, this vibration of joy, and it doesn't have to be grandiose, it's the small things actually that bring us the most joy. We get into this state of alignment. We get into this state of flow. We enter a flow state where things start to come to us. We open up doors to miracles. We release the blocks energetically and mentally of what we're gripping onto, and just create this state of allowance. And I just think a woman in her joy is more radical than a woman in her rage, actually. It's more defiant, actually, to be unapologetically joyful, and it is a choice. It's different than happiness, which is a fleeting emotion in my book. Joy is an active daily commitment you make to yourself to live at your in your highest light, that you know you deserve it, that it is your greatest gift to the world to be in your joy. And from that place, we connect to our purpose, we activate our gifts, we are of our highest service to others. And to me, that's the real the game. And we have been conditioned to believe it has to be hard. It doesn't.
Well, let's unpack that because look, I think a lot of people work hard. They have goals and they want to achieve success, whatever that looks like for themselves personally or their family. And I'm one of those people. And I want to drill down into something you said. It's not like the big thing, so to speak. It's the everyday moments. And I think it's very easy, especially in our culture today, to get caught on the hedonic treadmill where joy is maybe found in the planning of like the next big vacation or the house or whatever it might be, whereas it really is the moments in everyday life. So let's spend some time there and how you think about that and how do you balance, because it's not wrong to be ambitious and work hard and have a career, but how do you infuse, because like something's broke if you bust your ass working in an effort for like the next vacation. But there's also nothing wrong with working hard and having a great vacation. But how do you infuse a little bit of that joy into your everyday life?
For sure. And I want to state that if we want to create success and abundance and provide for our families and take those vacations and not worry about them when we pay for them. Like working hard is beautiful, especially when we are aligned to what we love to do. And that's also a privilege and a gift for a lot of people. And if you aren't in that state or you get stuck and feeling in the overwhelm, if you've chosen a career that's quote unquote on purpose, the stress and the overwhelm and victim mentality around being so busy can certainly creep in. And so to answer your question around joy as a practice, Joe Dispenza talks about this, like the heart, is the biggest electromagnetic force field in the body. It's 10,000 times stronger than our brain. It literally emits magnetism outside of our energy field, about 4 feet outside of our aura. And anything that gets your heart activated is really the practice, whether that's taking a long walk in nature in the morning, paying attention to the way the sun enters your kitchen while you're drinking your coffee, spending time with the people that you love, playing with your kids. I picked up art for the first time in 30 years. I went to Blix and bought markers and paper.
I love Blix.
Yeah, I love who Blix is such like a playground for joy, actually. And to really go back to like my 4th grade little girl and just my art sucks. It's not good, but it's so much fun to make it. And I practice making art on the weekends if I've got the time. I love, ecstatic dance. Nashville, where I live, has all of these incredible dance parties that you go at 10 a.m. on a Sunday, completely sober, and you just dance your face off and sweat and move energy. Reading a book, listening to a song, honestly, being conscious of the connection into your heart space as a practice really, from a scientific perspective, shifts your frequency. And when we are in our sense of joy and we create that, we turn that magnetic force field online. The key word is magnetic. We become magnetic. We draw things to us that are more in that aligned vibration, like attracts like. That's not woo, that's science. And and so really not thinking that anything is off limits, like nothing is too indulgent, nothing is too frivolous. Gratitude, which we hear all the time, but gratitude practices are huge. Setting the intentions each morning, like, I don't have to do this thing. I get to do this thing. Your words are wands. Our thoughts create our reality. Being very conscious of the way we look at our lives is key. And then making certain choices. Like I said, joy is a choice, acting upon it to get ourselves into a physical vibration of joy. It doesn't have to be going on a massive vacation to experience joy. It's available to us every single day.
Beautiful. I want to come back to this idea of light and dark, and needing to spend time in the dark, if you will. I recently watched an interview with Will Reeve, and Will Reeve is the son of Christopher Reeve, who tragically passed away, I think, when Will was 12 years old. And then his mother died 2 years later of lung cancer, and she had never smoked. So here, kid's 14 years old, both his parents are gone. And he was saying in this interview, he's a grown man now, how he didn't grieve really as a kid, and through therapy, he had to like spend time in the darkness to really get to the light. Very similar to what you said. It really so this idea of like going there and really understanding the darkness. So let's spend some time there, because I do think there's a tendency, and I'll put myself in this bucket, to maybe acknowledge, it's this fine line. It's like you want to acknowledge the darkness, if you will, but you want to move to the light, because in my view, you could end up with a victim mentality if you spend too much time in the darkness, and that becomes your story. So how do you think about the light and the dark and that path forward?
I have a lot to say. I wrote a whole book about that, Jason. I make the joke actually that I could have titled the book "The Dark Work" instead of "The Light Work" because I go so deep into my own personal stories of trauma and failure and pain as a mirror. The book isn't really about me. I'm the vessel. It's really a reflection to the person who reads it to remind her she's not alone in her own darkness. That said, to answer your question, I believe that the human experience, like we came here to experience it all, like the full breadth of emotion, going back to rage versus joy and everything in between. And the dark is our doorway. It's our way shower into our power, into our truth, into our authenticity, into our joy. And when we allow ourselves to meet the dark versus avoid it, bypass it, go around it, with the understanding that this is here to teach us something, that we're on some, and this is my, beliefs. We're here on a very unique assignment, and we're here to experience these lessons that are specific to us and our unique timelines that are designed to bring us closer to love, light, our full power. I remember when I was in my 20s, I went through this horrific breakup. My heart had never shattered in that way in my life. And I was a little bit of a victim, actually. I nursed that breakup for a little too long. But I remember coming out on the other side when I started to really begin to heal it. And I went to a concert. I saw Imogen Heap in Chicago,
Imogen Heap. Wow.
the Vic Theater, way back in the day. I was in my 20s. And I remember taking in her live performance, and I was able to experience her music. I was able to receive the joy of that concert in the most visceral capacity. I'd never been to a concert like that. I'll never forget it. And I remember having the thought that my heart had broken so open from all of that grief and all of that pain that it had to physically expand my capacity to feel. So on the way up and out of that darkness, I had a whole new ability to experience life, to experience beauty, to experience art. And I think that we cannot truly reach our highest light unless we're willing to go into the dark and really face our pain and take responsibility at the end of the day, which is, I know, what we want to also get into. Victim consciousness is rampant and we all fall into it. And the real flex of personal growth, the real flex of personal empowerment comes when we are willing and able to take radical self-responsibility for our co-creation in that pain. And that's often a journey that doesn't happen right away. We typically need to feel all those feelings of victimhood and betrayal and blame, if you will, in order to reach the other side. But this is where hopefully books like mine and tools like a lot of what you teach on your platform and coaching and therapy can come in to really hold our hands through these dark periods that we have in our lives. And I think It's the greatest gift, the dark. I say that in the book.
Jason Walkup here, founder and co-CEO of mindbodygreen and the host of the mindbodygreen podcast. Please subscribe. You'll never miss a show and you won't regret it. No, I agree. And I think when one's taking that inventory with, as you, the term you coined, radical responsibility, in my opinion, a good place to start are past relationships that didn't work out. Because as my mother would say, it takes two to tango. And so in a relationship, it's two people. Like you're both in it, notwithstanding like outlier, there are always outlier relationships that are terribly abusive, but like that to me is a good, because I think we've all had experiences of relationships. Well, oh, that person was terrible or it didn't work out, or why did this happen to me versus what can I learn from this? What was I doing here? I consciously entered this thing.
Absolutely. One of my favorite quotes or expressions is when you point one finger at someone else, you try it right now, you have 3 that are pointing back at you. And that is some real hard that's what I say, when you take responsibility, that is the true crux, game, flex of personal growth. It's so easy to just cast the blame and make yourself the victim. We don't do this consciously, it's often unconscious. But when you're really willing, I would say that I was pretty much a victim to my entire life until I was 36 years old. Like, it was my husband's fault, it was my ex-boyfriend's fault, my ex-business partner's fault, my former boss's fault. I would blame the weather for my misery. Honestly, I was living in this state of it's all happening to me. And when I really learned the concept of radical responsibility, which was honestly deeply painful. I'm imperfect. I've made mistakes. I've shown up not as my highest self. I wasn't in integrity, right? Like, to really hold that mirror up to your own face. There's so much freedom in that. Beyond the pain, once you've moved through that discomfort and that like ego assault, you can really meet yourself and show up with so much freedom because now you know yourself. No one can call you out on anything you couldn't call yourself out on first.
Yeah. It's an area for me, I think, as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at with age. If I were to rewind 10 years ago, 20 years ago, I definitely had that narrative of, this happened or why did this person wrong me? And I think as I've gotten older, maybe wiser, maybe more relaxed, I've come to look at those uh, maybe bad relationships or mistakes I've made and said, yeah, I played a significant role here.
Absolutely. And how does that make you feel? Like, probably a lot more grounded, calm?
And I think part of it is maybe it's just me personally, but I turned 50 recently. And I think when you hit middle age, like the milestones, you start to really think about like, how what kind of life have I lived? What kind of legacy am I going to, leave? Like what would I undo? What would I do over? It's this the fine line of being retrospective, but also having the ability to look forward and move forward. Because I also think it's dangerous to just be too retrospective and live in the past. Because I think then it's over. I think it's that balance of looking backward to inform how you move forward. If you just look backward, I'm sorry, I think that's not a good sign.
Totally. I think it does come what you're saying is it comes with getting older, emotional maturity, really looking back at my younger self. I had this one particular relationship with a former business partner, and there was this huge story I had around being the victim. She was the persecutor. I showed up in a certain way that I'm not proud of when I look back on that. And I've taken my responsibility for my side in the street of that relationship and offer that former self, that former Jessica, that younger version of me, so much grace, so much compassion, and honestly, so much gratitude because it taught me so much. I wouldn't take back a thing, truly. I have no regrets. I think that's why I said I think it's really freeing when you can really alchemize those lessons in in your current future state to show up differently, knowing that you couldn't have shown up differently if that girl or that young version of yourself, that young man didn't make those mistakes in the first place, and to have no shame around any of it, but only grace. But we can only really get there unless we're willing to, like I said, take that responsibility.
So I'm gonna go to IG,
Okay, let's go.
where all of the great sound bites happen these days. So one post that particularly stood out to me and got a lot of attention, you write, quote, "If you are a woman triggered by other women, stop scrolling and listen." That's a good one.
Let's go. Okay. Oh, I love this topic. So, do you want me to finish what I said in that reel or
Yeah.
okay. We're all, I think women have many of us, if not all of us, have what I call the sister wound, where we, from a very young age up until adulthood, were bullied, betrayed, rejected, didn't feel like we were cool enough, belonged. And that is really rooted in something so much deeper, deeper than even our mothers and the society we grew up in as children. It really dates back into our DNA. And to give Cliff's notes here, in my research for the light work, I did a lot of unpacking around the feminine frequency, the feminine values on this planet. And, the question that I posed to myself was like, what happened before the patriarchy, which really was in the last 4,000 years when things just started getting written down on paper? What happened for hundreds of thousands of years before then? Because humanity's been around for about 200,000 years. And I learned in all of my research and discovery that we lived in a matriarchal society where women really led culture, tribe, how all innovation we see today across business, technology, the calendar system, astronomy, textiles, farming, agriculture. Women were really at the helm of so much innovation. And our superpower was our connection to nature, Mother Earth. We are living on a feminine being. And we were really connected to our sexuality, our sensuality, our tantric orgasm, our ability to create life. And as the patriarchy rose, became very threatening to the masculine. Church and state was formed. Old Testament started getting written. This is very high, broad Cliff's notes. And women became threatening. That power became dangerous, and to men, to the psyche of the masculine. And we were deemed wicked for doing so, for having such magic, for having such powers. And we were ultimately called witches. And between the years 1200 and 1700, millions and millions and millions of women were burned, were murdered.
Insane.
This is factual. And we were
I know.
and it wasn't that long ago. And I say that in my video on Instagram. Like, this actually in the grand history of time was not that long ago. And it is deep wired into our cells, like subcutaneously in our DNA and our programming in our psyche to, one, be afraid to be in our power, to take up space, to be seen, because if we did, we would literally die. Two, to be threatened by other women who were willing and able to do that, because there was literally almost only so much room for women to sit in seats of power. And even then we were the lesser. And we have really, on an unconscious, subconscious level, I think, really weaponized women against one another by being afraid of not just who they are becoming and the space they take up, the light they shine, but what's often unexpressed within ourselves. And so we have to make that wrong in other women. And it has just, been at the top of my heart. It's the top of my work, is the reclamation of the feminine. And we can't do that in a silo. We can't only do that within our own personal journeys. We have to really come together as a collective of women to heal that too. It's so deeply programmed in us. That's why we're all triggered.
It is, and you know what? I anecdotally, Colleen and I would talk about how now living in Miami, the women supporting women is so real here. I'm curious what your take it is in Nashville. We joke, Colleen gets invited to like so many events. Art Basel week comes here. It's a very big week in Miami. Colleen's invited to like a zillion events. I'm just like at home watching the kids. I'm like, this is unbelievable. Whether it's entrepreneurial events, business events, like the community, like women actually really support women here, which is really incredible. I think what we found in New York and maybe in some other circles, maybe not so much. More like the movie, Black Swan, where if you're walking down the stairs and, maybe not walk in front of a woman you're competing with because, that foot might come out and kick you down, so to speak. Women supporting women, and I think in many ways, like, wasn't really there, but it's really here and it's so powerful and wonderful to see.
It's the reason why I moved here, truly. Chicago had a very sort of similar vibration, and we can get into that. But I really feel like, it's so beautiful what's happening in certain communities and more broadly that women are really showing up for one another and realize that when she wins, I win, and there's more than enough to go around. And because we have this wound, this I call it the sister wound, we're coming into our adult careers, adult lives, and we're finding each other women that are deeply longing for authentic sisterhood, for women to truly embrace us, to hold us, to see us, to lift us up. There's a chapter in my book about it. It's called Female Friendships, the Greatest Medicine of Them All. I could have called healing your family trauma the greatest medicine of all, or finding great love the greatest medicine of all. But I really think that there's a core, deep void that we have on a conscious and subconscious level to really come together in community. And that is the true flex of healing, the divine feminine. It runs so deep. And when you really kind of show up in that longing, like to be really authentic in your social media platforms, your conversations with friends, your community, you will find and attract other women like that so much quicker and more organically than you even maybe know is possible. And that's really what I'm here for. And I love the masculine. We need beautiful men just like you, Jason, like to create that yin yang harmony. That's where we find the harmony is in the polarity. And we've just overvalued the masculine on a collective conscious level. And women rising right now in 2024 and beyond. It's just the most exciting time to be a woman, honestly, because we're finding our power, we're finding each other, and we're healing that wound in spades. And so I love to hear that for Colleen. That's music to my ears.
It's so wonderful to see, and it's for me, as I say, I am a product of the women who surround me. I was raised by a single mom. I've got 2 daughters, and so, you know, here I am. I'm a very proud girl dad, and it is an incredible time to be a little girl with big dreams in 2024. We're a big sports family, just like sports alone, what's happening. It's incredible, incredible. So, I have to talk Nashville, one of our favorite cities. You moved there recently. What's so amazing about Nashville?
What isn't amazing about Nashville? Um, it's first of all, I feel like it's at the tip of the iceberg as far as development, and there's just so many businesses, brands, restaurants, like, it's booming, right? And there's something for everyone, like great music, great shopping, great restaurants. The country scene is dope. I mean, love the things to do as far as lifestyle. I think it's the people. There is a, deep like, Southern hospitality is real here. Like, there's something really genuine and honest about, like, I know and not like, American values, like, take care of your neighbor, be kind. It's a slower pace, but it's not too slow. It's coming from New York or Chicago, it's so good for the nervous system to just, like, not feel like you have to get your coffee at Starbucks within 32 seconds, but you can wait 3 minutes. Like, everything is sort of downshifted here in a beautiful way, and for me, on a personal level, it's the nature. It is so green here. You can zip down a highway in 15 minutes and be in another world from the city with water and rolling hills and it's got the seasons, so it's not too cold, like, winter is mild. So you can really watch the cycles of, the year go by in front of you can watch flowers bloom, you can hear the birds chirp, the colors of the leaves that change because it's so green during the fall. I mean, the city just shines from a Mother Earth perspective. I think it's a very feminine city, to be honest. It's got just so much Gaia frequency, and the community here is lit. Like, as far as female entrepreneurs are concerned, there's so many of us. We really do, similar to what you were saying about Miami, we show up for each other. Like, women come out for one another. If you host an event, people will come. Like, it's insane. And there's also a very pop and spiritual wellness community, great yoga, just so much to do. Great farmers market. There's so much great music and live concerts to go see. Not all country, like really credible bands come through here and artists. It's stylish, but it's not pretentious. Like, what else do you want me to keep going? I'm hoping Nashville listens and pays me some money.
What part of town do you live in?
We're currently renting a house in 12 South, but we bought 5 acres of land in the forest, outside of.
So is that like Franklin area?
We're living in Bellevue, which is really close to Franklin. It's, like, right next to Franklin, borders Franklin. It's that side of town.
So for someone visiting Nashville, what's your go-to restaurant?
Ooh, that's great. I love my go-to is Rolf and Daughters.
Oh, yeah.
Have you been?
I think Colleen and I went last time we were in Nashville.
They own 2. One's called Folk in East Nashville, and one is called Rolf and Daughters in Germantown, and it's, like, communal tables, like, really cool, hip, little spot. The staff is I feel like they all have the same brand, like, they all look they're all kinda hipster, but anyway, the food is a limited menu, they change it up seasonally, they source from local regenerative farms. It's delicious, it's a vibe, it's low key, but it's still elevated. You could go on a date night, you can go with a bunch of girlfriends. The best chicken dish I've had in town. If you do gluten, there's which I don't do very often, but they have an amazing homemade pasta menu section, and they have just gorgeous seasonal appetizers. I could go on. It's my favorite spot, Rolf and Daughters. If you're coming through Nashville, hit it up.
We're there. I will let you know when we're coming through. We covered a lot of ground today. In addition to buying the book, The Light Work, which I encourage everyone to do, is there anything you'd like to leave our audience with? Perhaps some words of wisdom or some advice before we wrap?
I really, of course, want them to go read the book. There's so much in it. And I loved the question about joy. And I say, spoiler alert, at the back of the book, in fact, the very last paragraph, I won't read out the whole thing, but I say, what is a synonym for the word light? It's radiant, rich, luminous, glowing, sunny. And that woman walks into a room and changes the energy. That is a woman who is living her light. And that is a woman who has not had it easy. That's a woman who has done her work, who has done the light work. And just to know that you've been given all of your gifts and your darkness and your traumas for your highest evolution, and to go in, not around. And that's really where we activate our power, our authenticity, and our joy, which is the greatest birthright we have to humanity and responsibility. So that's what I would say to her.
Amen. Jessica, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. So good to be with you.